Oh god, I hope I wired everything right. Hey guys, Meticulous Maynard here. In the last episode, I got a bunch of things taken care of on the interior of the car and also got started on getting the new sound system installed. This episode, we're going to focus on getting that sound system finished up. Here, I'm actually pulling the faceplate off the head unit so that I can pull that out and then get the new head unit installed. So I'm just going to let this kind of roll out and put the music on, and I'll catch up with you guys after this. Okay, so I'm about halfway through wiring up my sound system here. So I've gotten quite a bit of progress, such as the old head units out like you saw in the time lapse. Both of my amps are installed, so that's sweet. And I tried to tuck all the wiring in as neatly as I could, keeping in mind that this will need to come out, because keep in mind, the passenger seat is going to be over this, so you're not going to see it most of the time. But if I need to tune it, I need to be able to get to this face, because this is where all the controls are. So I want to make sure that this comes out. And pardon my knee there, but it's tight quarters. I'm actually sitting in the back seat back here right now, because anywhere else I sit is on top of precious electronics. I've run my grounds for my amplifiers to a riv nut there on the body. Everything's kind of neatly tucked under the carpet. It's a little hard to pull that all up right now. And my power wire, I've actually snaked parallel to any of the signal wires for the system. The only places where it gets close are areas like here, but it's okay if it kind of crosses it. But if it follows it, you might pick up some interference from the amount of power that's coming through that wire. So what I did is I actually ran this, and you can see it hops over the transmission tunnel, goes down, and it kind of disappears, but it goes down between here and there. There's like a little bit of an indentation so it doesn't interfere with the seat rail. Then it comes along and runs along this structural member that's sitting under the carpet, comes up, and you can see the other amp power is coming out of there, and it runs up and along this side. And I actually was able to tuck up and use a very familiar location, because up there is actually the original fuel line grommet from the car. I need to get plugs to fill the top and bottom holes, but I was able to run my 1/0 power cable coming from the engine compartment to my splitter block for the fuses, and then it breaks down to my 4-gauge cables that run back to the two amplifiers. So I think it's kind of a clean setup, and I'm actually really happy that I have a fuse block right next to the cabin fuse block. Everything's co-located in pretty much the same location for function, so that's always good for serviceability. The only thing I have yet to figure out is kind of how to secure this. There's a body stud there, but it's some weird coarse thread thing, and it's only one of them, so I might drop a couple riv nuts in the body or something to secure that, because obviously I don't want that flopping around over pedals and such. So a little bit of work to do there. So the only thing really left is the RCA cables that I've kind of snaked up around the column here, and they come up and around. And for the moment, I have them all dangling low and down to the head unit while I'm kind of testing stuff. I will be able to take all this and kind of zip tie it up neatly, because there isn't too much that sits in this little lower bay. So that's kind of nice. I can tuck all those there, and it shouldn't cause too many of an issue. And then the only other thing is that I had to make up... Oh, come on out. It's a little stubborn, I think, now that I've tied in a couple other wires. There we go. This is the adapter harness I had to make for my Android-based head unit. And it's super cool in the fact that it gave me all these labels of where to put things. So I just linked them all up to, you can just buy a bare single-ended harness here that you can make an adapter to, and buried underneath all of this nice fabric tape is my solder joints, where I went in and just lined up each of them correctly. Basically, it was just color matching all of the wires, so it was super easy. The only exceptions being the rear camera, because this is the signal wire that tells it that this is the rear camera going on, and then obviously amplifier control, so that when the head unit turns on, it wakes up these two bad boys. Parking brake, I think you're supposed to wire up to that connector somehow. Other than that, I can then hook that up to my head unit, and then I can do some testing. But in order to do that, kind of need to put speakers in. So this leads me to the halfway point that I'm kind of at right now, where I now need to put crossovers, woofers, and tweeters in all of my doors. So this is kind of the next process. Okay, it's much later now at this point, but I've managed to get the crossover system installed both in the front doors and in the rear. Can't see it as well, lighting sucks over here, but we'll just look at it up in the front. So the basic idea is that my speaker wires come along, come through the door conduit, come out, go to the crossovers, and these are specific to my kit here. So these are designed to work with the Polk audio system that I have. You can see the in there, and then the outputs for tweeter and woofer go back out, and then the woofer goes down here, and the tweeter, for the time being, goes here, but it actually belongs right there. All four doors are now set up this way, so now I can move on to doing the final install for that head unit, get everything squared away there in the center, and do a test of this entire system. I know the car's a freaking mess. I should probably take a minute and clean all that up too before we get on to the next step. I never realized how dirty my chairs got just from sitting in the shop until I put them in, of course. I'm gonna have to take the shop vac and clean these out and all that goodness, huh? But damn, son. Now I want to go for a drive. Pity there's all this work to do still. So up front, I've done a couple of things to wire up the amp. Don't mind the cables on here. I have my battery charger just sitting here tending this battery right now because I don't want this to go dead while we're testing out some of the audio system stuff. So notably here, there's this big wire that's definitely not stock. It goes down to this little guy, which is an automotive breaker. So that's rated to 200 amp there. And I just turned it on, but if you want to ever pop it just to kill all the power and everything, you just press that button, go back. Now it's locked in. It's a nice little unit here, nice and secure and snug. It almost looks like it belongs there. And then I've run my 1/0 cable along all of the main harness going to the starter down there, except instead of going down to the starter, it loops under and goes back through the firewall, like I was showing you from the interior. So everything's wired up here. Again, chargers on there to keep the battery tended. So let's hop in and test out the sound system. Oh God, I hope I wired everything right. Okay, that's the first good sign. Head unit came right on, and I see it's got a bunch of features here. For the moment, it seems like it has the FM radio. And I'm actually receiving FM signals, so that's pretty sweet. So I'm going to pair my phone. Oh, yes. So now that I've confirmed that the sound system works, the next step is to get my door cards back together so that they look like the passenger side over there. Still need to put the door handle bezel back on, but that's no big deal. So one issue I've run into, because this is an old Forester and a lot of these SG chassis Foresters have this problem, is these window gussets, sail panel, however you want to call them, develop a tear right here at the top because the rubber gets old and brittle and everything. And what actually happens is this creates an air leak, and when you're driving at highway speeds and such, you hear a whistle from these. So super easy to go get a replacement part from Subaru, like, you know, this is the genuine part, and it doesn't have a tear right here, and it's fresh stuff, so it will last a significant amount of time. So the big deal here is you want to lower the window all the way so it doesn't, it's not in this channel, because that's going to fight you on your way out. You want to disconnect your mirror harness connector here, and then the mirror is held on with 1, 2, 3 Phillips screws. Mirror comes off with this little pigtail. Make sure to guide that out through this hole, and then to remove the gusset itself, you've got a couple of bolts and 1 nut here on the door. So you crack loose this 10mm. This is a nut on an adjustable stud, so that in theory gives the sail panel adjustment in out like this in case you need it, and it also gives it front to back adjustment so you can get it lined up with your door. This top one is a 10mm bolt. There's 1 more in there, and behind this is another 10mm. Once you get those out, you have to kind of push this stud and twist and lift out the whole assembly. Once you have it in, you want to make sure that you roll your window all the way back up again and line up your top edge here with the leading edge of your glass, and also close the door and just check how it looks against the door gasket. So you may see in some areas where you might have a wear mark where the door gusset sat previously, and generally 9 times out of 10 you want to get back to that position because that worked perfectly fine and there wasn't any leaks. So yeah, I'm going to rip that off real quick, replace it, and then that'll allow me to put my tweeters on, which before, when I was testing the system, I just kind of had them dangling, usually like in the door bracket or whatever. But this is actually the original stock tweeter bracket. It needed a touch of modification because these tweeter assemblies are just a little larger than the Subaru ones that came stock on this. And I zip tied my lead there so there's strain relief. And all of that will tuck behind and it sits like that. And I can even put the stock cover on over it and you'd never even know. I'm gonna do my gusset here, then get this door panel back together, and then I can move on to the rears. So on the rear doors, there are these blocks of foam, and you can already see where I put the purple Sharpie. We have a bit of an interference with our crossover there, which I kind of had a feeling would be the case. I was trying to put it somewhere where it wouldn't interfere, but there's not a lot of real estate on the inside of these door cards. So what I'm doing, originally I traced this to kind of cut this out, but you know, and they're super simple because they're just one-sided glued on, so they just pop right off, and I overshot that time. Yeah, so those are gone. So because the rear doors only had the door speakers down low, they didn't have tweeters up top. There is no provision for them. For the time being, I've been hanging them from the doors, but really there needs to be a way to get these all mounted in here. They do provide these little flush mount sockets for them, so the only thing I have to do is drill a hole through my door card in order to make a provision for that. These ones in particular, I've measured the 3/4 hole saw, works really well for these, but of course this is just so unnerving doing this. Like, this is a door. I shouldn't be drilling through it. There it is. So I got my pilot going. So now I want to get into the hole a little bit, get it spinning. Drop my little cup in. And then this little bracket mounts behind everything. And that little bracket kind of comes around on the back side and holds it in place and pulls it close. So now I can put the tweeter through there and it'll hold it for me. So now I'm just going to clean the door real quick. Because I've been sitting in my shop for a little while and they're both dirty and look like they have some garage door track grease on them or something sticky. It's almost like peanut butter. Alright, so in the interim, I've gotten this whole bezel panel painted up black. It was kind of bothering me that there was the trim piece around the selector here, and the previous owner had put a XM module, the Sirius radio thing, like right here, and it scratched the crap out of the trim. So I started to paint that black, and then I put it up next to this, which was still silver. I realized that was still silver, so it didn't transition well. So I painted this black. I left the vents gray. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it beats like taking all these apart and painting them up, and then like having the paint wear off of all these surfaces that I'm touching all of the time. So I was like, you know what, let's draw the line somewhere. So I didn't mess with those. But I gotta get this trim piece down in here. But before I do, there was a cigarette lighter here and an aux input for the old head unit. I'm not using that aux input anymore. This thing has an aux port, where is it, right there? Much easier to get to than way down here and having to require a separate harness and all that jazz. And then the cigarette lighter, great, but I'm always tapping it off into a USB adapter anyways. So I got one of these. Actually, I got two of these. that are just these little 2.1 amp USB chargers. Positive, negative, super simple. And it's the same form factor as the old cigarette lighter. But rather than be ordinary and just, you know, put the one where the old cigarette lighter was and then leave this aux input that does nothing, I thought to myself, why not put two of these side by side so that the driver and passenger both have their own power sources and tie them into the old cigarette lighter harness right here. So I'm going to grab that harness and then we'll kind of go take a look at what it's going to take to get that installed. So to convert over this stock cigarette lighter here to the USB ports I was showing you guys, I need to tap into the harness back here for that power. And actually I was thinking, since this is actually just getting removed entirely, I might just reuse this connector. But it's super important that I pay attention to the wire pinouts here, because you can see I've got ground and power for the cigarette lighter here, and then I've got ground and power for the LED in this ring that goes around it. So because I've got two power ports on either side and then a gauge in the middle telling me my and then I got a voltmeter in the middle, I'm going to feed my two USB ports off of these, and then off of this one, I'm actually going to feed the voltmeter. So I'm going to pull this back out and solder a couple things up on the bench real quick. After a quick test in the car, I realized that these two green and black-white wires here don't seem to do anything when he's on or anything like that. So I actually just nipped them back, tucked them away, and then rerouted it so that all of the power coming off of this connector goes to these, rather than trying to use the illumination wires for whatever reason they weren't working. All right, panels back in, give it a test. Oh yeah. Green, that's different. Yeah, I think the idea was that, you know, like the lights and the gauges and everything on the car are all green. So maybe that's why I had originally planned on that. And I mean, I've since switched over to the red, which I think just looks better. This green is actually pretty bright while I'm sitting up here in the driver's seat, so it's not really ideal. So what I'll do is I'll order a red one up, throw that in there, because this is pretty easy to just pop on and off if I just pull up on this ledge down here. So, but yeah, I mean, this is great progress on everything. Everything's together, and I'm super happy with it. So you know what? Let's play some tunes to run this one out, because I've had a chance to listen to the sound system. It's actually really good. But yeah, this sounds really good with a proper What Will Be kind of song, because the sub back there really hits now. And I have it tuned so it's still kind of low, not super obnoxious or anything. And I do have a little tuner knob tucked here. But yeah, let's ride this one out. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I know I've had a hell of a lot of fun putting this back together. And I gotta say, I'm just about ready to put this back on the road. So I think the next step, get that motor together and get it taken care of and everything. I still got a suspension in the back to put together. Tons of things to do, of course. But this, I feel like this is a good tipping point for me. And yeah, we really got to get this done. Because this just, I mean, the daily driver has to sound great, you know? So, yeah, all the usuals, everybody. If you liked this, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below. All that activity really helps the channel grow. And yeah, catch you guys next time.